Hi, friends, and welcome to the Wine CEO podcast. I'm your host and certified sommelier, Sarah, and I'm so excited you're here. Do you ever feel like wine is totally intimidating? Maybe you get overwhelmed shopping in the wine aisle and have no idea what to buy for that recipe you're cooking. Or maybe you have to bring a bottle of wine to a dinner party with your in laws and you're nervous to pick one that will taste awful. Well, I'm here to tell you that wine does not have to be stressful. Each week on this podcast, we chat about fun and relatable wine topics that help you learn and feel more confident as a wine consumer. Friends, after a decade in this industry, I know sommeliers can make wine feel snobby or overwhelming, and the average person truly just wants to know, what wine will go with my pizza? How many glasses is too many at a work luncheon? Or how do I know if a wine is sweet? So join me each week as we dive into exciting topics like these and learn about all things wine related. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome to episode number 117 of the Wine CEO podcast. We are about 2/3 of the way through our mini series on Greece, and the last 2 weeks were spent focusing on Greece's largest island, Crete. But there are so many islands in Greece. In fact, there are over 6,000 islands that are a part of the country, which is insane when you think about it. Now, only like 200 of these are inhabited, but that's still a ton. And on many of those 200 inhabited islands, there are grapes, so they're making wine. Again, if you remember back to my first episode in this mini-series, there are 350 or more indigenous grape varieties in Greece. So there's a lot to cover if you can imagine that multiple of those indigenous varieties are found on these islands. So lots to cover, could be overwhelming, but you know me, we are going to keep this super, super simple today and just focus on the main island groups that you want to know about. Really, there's one section that I'll talk about in just a minute that you really want to know, but I'm going to mention two others really quickly here. So first up, there is the Ionian Islands, actually, which we focused on in episode number 114, where we talked about the Peloponnese because they're up close to the Peloponnese as a region. But the two others that we have, so we have the Dodecanese, and this is an island group that's all the way to the east of the Aegean Sea. It's next to Turkey. And here you mainly need to know about the island of Rhodes. This is the largest of the 12 islands that's part of the Dodecanese, and it's believed to be one of Greece's longest wine-producing regions. It's known for white wines made from Athiri, Malagousia, and Asurtico, as well as reds made from Mandalaria and Mavrothirico. That's pretty much it. We're going to keep it that simple. Rhodes is a PDO on the island of Rhodes within the Dodecanese. Done. That's pretty much what you want to know about if we're keeping it super, super simple. Then we have the North Aegean Islands, and this is where you have quite a few protected designations of origin. So again, PDOs, regions that are classified so consumers can expect a certain typicity and style from these regions in the wines. Now, you're going to find a lot of sweet wine coming from these islands, but you are going to find white, red, rosé, and sparkling as well. Now, I will say, sadly, there's not a ton of wines being produced in this region compared to what we believe there was many, many centuries ago. There was an incredible history of winemaking on these islands, but a lot of the vines were not cultivated, were not, taken care of for a while. And in modern days, there's just not as much wine production happening on these islands anymore. Now, the region is very well known for ouzo production. This is like the center of ouzo production for Greece and for the world, I think. So it's an area that I hope we see more of in the near future when it comes to wines, but it's still growing. I think they're trying to revitalize a couple of the islands and have some really great wines being made from there. But it's definitely a more minor region, and there's nothing in particular that's really worth pointing out at the moment. Some people might disagree with me, but again, we're going to keep it super simple. There's really not a ton coming from the North Aegean Islands that if you're thinking about Greece as a whole snapshot, trying to do a really high level overview that you really need to focus on. Okay, but then that brings us to the final island group. And honestly, the most famous one, the one you really need to be familiar with, and the one where we're going to focus our discussion both today and next week. And that's the Cyclades. Now, first and foremost, I am going to clarify something here. Don't be embarrassed if you thought that the pronunciation was the Cyclades, because I did too. For the longest time, I have called this island group the Cyclades, maybe because of the Cyclops in like Greek mythology, but I always thought it was pronounced Cyclades, but no. In fact, the Greeks pronounce it the Cyclades. So learn something new, right? So it's called the Cyclades. And today we're going to look at a small island in the Cyclades called Tinos Island. And then next week, we are going to talk about the Mac Daddy Island that honestly has put Greek wines on the world stage, and that is Santorini, right? Everyone's beautiful favorite vacation destination. So I thought it would be fun to compare these two because obviously Santorini is a very well-known island. And honestly, the white wines coming from Santorini are probably the most well-known Greek wines around the world right now. And again, what has probably put Greek wines on the map for many wine consumers. But then you have Tinos Island, and it's definitely lesser known compared to Santorini, but it has a growing wine community on it. And there's one particular winery that is working to preserve the tradition of the island and small villages of traditional island winemakers, and this is Thanos. So today I'm interviewing the associate winemaker from Thanos, and Thanos, who you'll meet in just a moment, speaks a lot about the importance of preserving the traditions of winemaking on these small islands throughout Greece. You know, winemaking is hard work. Harvesting grapes is difficult, right? It's farming, and it's often done by hand on the side of a mountain in a lot of these islands. So it is not glamorous. And what a lot of these villages are finding is that many kids are leaving the villages to go to larger towns on the island, or they're even leaving the islands altogether to move to a big city. And so these small villages are losing their wineries. They're losing their history. So I don't want to give it all away, but it's a really unique winery. They're calling themselves a project for all the reasons that I just mentioned, because it is their goal, it's their desire to really reinvest in this winery that was kind of dilapidated and it needed to be rescued. And by doing that, it has been able to bring jobs and stability back to this village. So really cool story, really cool winery. And they also have the backing of some really big names in the restaurant industry and the wine world. They're making some phenomenal wines. They are really well renowned and they're winning some pretty big awards as well. So definitely a winery to keep an eye on. And so it's a region that I think folks are going to become more and more familiar with. So before I give it all away, let's go ahead and dive into my interview with Thanos Georgilas of Thanos Winery. Well, Wine CEO podcast listeners, I am so excited because today on the podcast show, I have an amazing guest with me. I have Thanos Georgilas, and Thanos is the associate winemaker at Thanos Winery on Tinos Island in the Cyclades in Greece. And he's worked all over the world at top wineries, including Opus One in Napa, Chateau Latour in Bordeaux. And we are so honored to have him on the show today. I'm really excited to hear more about the Thanos Winery. So Thanos, welcome to the Wine CEO podcast.
Well, welcome. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you. So happy to have you with me. So Thanos, what would be wonderful, I think, is if you could start off by telling our listeners a little bit more about yourself, and then maybe we can get into the history of the Thanos Winery as well.
Yeah, of course. So personally, I studied, I joined the University of Athens in 2004 in the Department of Enology. I finished my studies in 2009, and then I joined the Master of Viticulture and Enology in Montpellier in the Supagro. It was a 2 years program. And then once I finished, I went to work in Napa Valley for almost 3 years at Opus One. And after that, I decided that I wanted to come back closer to Europe. And I joined Chateau Latour for a year to a year and a half. And in 2017, end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I returned back to Greece because I wanted to try something to my home country. And in February 2018, I joined Thanos.
That's incredible. It sounds like you've worked for some very well-known wineries, so some great experience there. So what brought you specifically to Thanos? Was it anything in particular that brought you back to Tinos Island?
Well, actually, at the beginning, I knew the winery. Once I returned back to Greece, I sent my CV to several wineries. Then I got a call from the owner, and he asked me if I wanted to join the team. I did a visit in the island. I saw the place. I fell in love with the unique landscape here and the unique vineyards, and then it all worked out.
The rest is history, as they say, right?
Exactly.
I love it. You mentioned the unique landscape. So let's talk about the island for a second, kind of the history of Tinos, and then that'll probably lead us into a little bit more about Thanos Winery as well. So Tinos Island is a fairly small island, and it's pretty much covered in rocks, right? I mean, it's a very rocky, somewhat mountainous type of island. So tell us a little bit more about Tinos Island, the microclimates there, and how it's really unique.
So, in general, if you compare Tinos Island with other islands in Cyclades, it's actually, I think, the third biggest.
Okay.
So it's quite big for an island. There are different microclimates in the island. Most of the island is full of terraces. And the reason is because back in history, there were many agriculture activities in the island. They had they had plantations of tomatoes, cereals. In general, the agriculture was quite a big thing. And because there are quite many cliffs, because Tinos has a lot of mountains, the agriculturers back then, they constructed terraces all over the island. Now that we want to speak about Thanos, we are situated in the northern part of the island, in an area that is full of granite rocks. It's called Sterasta. And there the microclimate changes a bit, because on the rest of the island we have schist and clay. And there up in Sterasta we have sandy soil with granite bedrock and giant granite rocks. So this is the particularity, let's say, of the microclimate at Sterasta and the terroir. The altitude also, we're in the island, we are in the highest vineyard. We are at 460 meters above sea level. And that creates also something unique by itself.
Is it rather windy on the island? I know, like in some of the Greek islands, it's so windy that the grapevines have to be grown in basically like bushes, kind of, around the ground. But is it quite that windy on Tinos Island?
It is windy. It's actually one of the islands with the most wind, let's say, you can find in Cyclades. We don't use the system of the bush vines, though. We use another system. We have gobelet with wooden posts, wooden sticks on each vine. And the reason we do that is because during the vegetative period, we attach the shoots to the wooden posts so they don't break because of the wind. So it's a different style, but still it helps against the wind.
Sure. And Tofino's is not that old for a winery, right? I mean, it's been around, I think the first plantings were in 2002, right? So a little bit of a newer winery. But it sounds like there's been an incredible partnership with the Ducasse restaurant group, right? Which is
Right.
definitely a very well-known, world-renowned restaurant group. And so that's probably helped with a lot of the wines that you're making being very well-known around the world. What has the reception been around Greece? I mean, do you feel that there are a lot of other wineries that have been really excited about the Tofino's project and some of the new things that you're doing there?
Well, I think there's a common appreciation of our work in general in Greece. We see it. Many people speak about us. It is appreciated, the work and the quality of our wines. Well, as you said at the beginning, it was the owner, Mr. Abatagelos, together with Gerard Marjon, the head sommelier of the restaurants of Ducasse, that they had this idea coming to Tinos and planting a vineyard. A friend of Mr. Abatagelos, helped a lot, Praxitelis Janoulinos, who is from the island, from the village of Alatados, helped a lot because he put in contact Mr. Avatagelos with his brother Michalis Janoulinos, who is our vineyard manager, and Michalis showed him the best place, the best let's say spot to plant a vineyard, because he knew from the locals that was the best area back then where they cultivated vines. So they found he showed him the spot of Sterasta, and that's how it all started. In terms of the winery and the project, it's important to say that is project that the idea of the owner was to give birth again to an abandoned vineyard. Mm-hmm. And also it goes towards some like social perspective, because he wanted also to provide jobs to people from the village, so they stay in the village, and that will help the community of the island and specifically of the village. And that's important to say, because we see many, like nowadays, that young people leave from villages to go to either, for example, here in Tinos, to the town of Tinos, or to big cities to find their jobs. And I think that's an important thing to mention as well.
Yes, thank you. It sounds like, from what I read on your website, that the goal has always been to create the best wines in Greece, just really high quality, exceptional wines. And it sounds like you all are definitely doing that. I mean, the wines have received incredible accolades and awards for the great work being done. And you really focus on two main grape varieties, correct? Can you talk to us a little bit about the two main grapes that you're growing in the project?
Yes, we focus on two main varieties, Acetic and Mavrotragano. They're both varieties from indigenous from Cyclades. And Sterasta is planted. Sterasta is 7.5 hectares, all united, and it's planted 95% in Acetic. All of our Acetico is there. Then we have 3 other parcels. We have Rasonas, which is 2 hectares, where we have our Mavrotrano that produces the Mavrotrano rare. It's 2 hectares on terraces. And then we have 2 other small vineyards, Agios Dimitrios and Sparveri. Agios Dimitrios, half of it is Mavrotrano and half of it is Avoustiatis. And Sparveri is Avoustiatis. Avoustiatis, we use it for the production of the rosé. Okay.
And were these grape varieties chosen because they were indigenous to Tinos Island originally?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And also indigenous in Cyclades. So we had, well, at the beginning, I know that they tried several varieties as an experiment. We were going to focus on those because they give the best results.
Angustiatus, I'm not as familiar with. Is that a indigenous grape variety that is more common to the Cyclades? Is it found around Greece?
It's around Greece. I think, if I'm not mistaken, comes from the island, from the Ionian part, the Ionian complex of the islands close to Italy, the Ionian Sea. And if I'm not mistaken, it comes from Zante.
Okay, great. Is it more fruit forward, more floral?
It's fruit forward, I would say, depending on the style, of course, of winemaking, but it's fruit forward. It's quite tannic, so you have to be quite careful with the extraction. It gives good results. 2008 in 2018 was the last time we did a red with that, and since 2019 we use all of our Agustiatis in our rosé.
Okay. We've been talking about the Acertico and the Mavrotregano, and you do these single variety wines, but then you also have like a step up, like a rare version of these wines as well. So can you explain the difference in your portfolio between these wines?
Yeah, of course. So we have Acertico rare. So the difference, let's start from the vineyard. Within Serrasta, in Serrasta, as I mentioned, we have all of our Acertico. We separated Serrasta in different spots because each spot has different maturity, so different harvest dates. Having that, we were able to see that two specific spots within Serrasta were giving a completely different result, and the reason was that apart from the sand and the granite, the soil is there. Those two spots have a tiny bit of clay, and that gave a completely different result on the grapes and then on the final product. So those two spots give them the Acertico rare. In terms of vinification, is exactly the same thing with the normal Acertico. It's just changing a bit the aging, because rare ages in 500-liter barrel and 2 amphors, and it could stay a bit longer on its lees before it gets bottled. So we speak about low production. It's approximately 1,500 bottles Klosterasta Acertico rare. And also, we don't produce it every year. We produce it only in exceptional vintages. And let's speak about Mavrotregano rare. So the Klosterasta Mavrotregano normal cuvée comes from the Mavrotregano tiny part that we have at Sterasta, and the Mavrotregano Vaios Dimitrios. The rare comes from Rasounas, where it is a vineyard on terrace, is 100% Mavrotregano with a different soil texture. It has sandy soil with clay and schist, so completely different result compared with the Klosterasta Mavrotregano normal cuvée.
And Mavrotregano can have pretty firm tannins, right? It can be a really, really bold wine. So I'm assuming that that's a wine that you would probably age, right? You'd want to age for some time before enjoying it.
Big potential of aging, yeah. We taste Mavrotreganos from 2010, 2012, and they still powerful and with a lot of energy. So it has a big potential of aging.
I'm sure. So probably lots of decanting if you're going to drink it young.
Lots of especially the Mavrotregano rare.
Amazing. If you were to pair both of these wines with some typical food, what would you pair these wines with?
Food. I would say the Acertico could go with seafood, especially the normal cuvée, seafood, oysters, grilled fish. The rare could go, let's say, more with bigger fish, like more like meaty, because it has also a different texture. It's more complex.
Okay.
All the Mavrotregano the normal cuvee could go easily with cheese and also with meat, barbecue. There are many things you can play with.
That's great. Are there any winemaking techniques that you do that are unique at T-Oinos compared to maybe when you were at Opus One or when you were at Chateau Latour? Is there anything that you do that's uniquely Greek or unique to the history of Tinos Island?
In terms of winemaking, I wouldn't say so. So our main goal is to preserve the energy and the typicity of the place. So all of our viticultural works and also the winemaking process is towards that direction. We want to keep the purity and the authenticity of the place, put it in the bottle, and then the wine will travel and will reflect the place. That's our main goal. So all of our works, all of the ways we work is towards that direction. So in terms of winemaking, we do them like I can say in a minimalistic way of winemaking. So we try not to intervene a lot. Simple things just to keep the wine as pure as possible.
I think I read on your website that you use light clarification, for example, with the Acertico. So is that one of the examples of more minimal intervention?
Exactly. And also we work since 2018. We work on a project. We work with a French company. We identified our yeasts from the vineyard. We found several species, yeast strains. We did tastings. We found some that they were really interesting, and then we inoculate with those yeasts, with those different species, yeast strains, and that helps us a lot because we are able to keep the purity and reflect the landscape.
Sure.
Where the grapes and at the end the wine comes from.
That's so interesting. So you think that the indigenous yeast truly also helps continue to speak to place and the unique terroir because it also comes from the island.
Of course.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really useful tool for us.
So when you think about the unique flavors in the Acertico and the Mavrotrigano that you're making compared to, say, other islands in the Cyclades that are making the same grape varieties, what are the unique flavors that you feel are apparent in the wine because of the place of Tinos? Are there specific flavors that you could speak to?
Well, first of all, due to the reason that we are on a high altitude and we don't face excessive heat waves during the summer, we are able to have let's say a perfect phenolic maturity. So that helps us a lot to preserve the aromas of the varieties, and we are not obliged to harvest because of the high levels of sugar, and that's really important. So we have floral notes. We have more citrusy aromas in our Acerticos, and also the microclimate helps a lot because apart from the high altitude and the lower temperatures, the winds, they bring the saltiness, the salt from the sea, and the iodine. So those are characteristics also of our wines. Also, we can speak about the soil, that the soil is a sandy soil with granite bedrock underneath. So the sandy soil, it's a poor soil. So Acertico grows there, and then you have this purity and this austerity, this precision that comes from the soil, and a different expression of minerality as well coming from the granite rocks.
That's great. I just made a note. I heard you say there's no heat waves in summer. So I'm hearing that this is a great place to vacation. is what I just decided, that it's beautiful in the summer, not too hot. It sounds like great white and rosé wine to go with some fresh fish. So is Tinos Island a beautiful place to visit?
Yeah, no, it's a great island for vacations. The truth is, but sometimes the tourists are not accustomed to such a strong wind, so sometimes they complain about that. For us, it helps a lot in the vineyards. Well, it makes our work a bit difficult because we speak about like an extreme viticulture, as our consultant and master vigneron Stefan Derenoncourt says. Stefan joined the project in 2016, and he said that it's hard to work and it's an extreme viticulture.
And I know that grapes tend to enjoy a difficult climate, right? Like the best grapes are going to come from an area where they really have to labor to get the nutrients. So I'm sure in the rocky soil, it's perfect for the grapes, but it must be difficult for the individuals working in the vines, that it's a tough climate. Do you hand harvest all of the grapes?
Yeah, we do hand harvest. Most of our practices, viticultural practices are made by hand.
Yeah.
And harvest as well. Yeah, it's difficult to work. You have to get used to the wind. You have to get used to low temperatures during the winter. We like the last couple of years we get snow pretty often in January for about a week. So it's quite hard to work in the vineyards. Because let's say we have temperatures close to zero, but then with the strong winds from the north, the real temperature, let's say feeling temperature, is quite less. It's below zero. So
sure. Are there a lot of other wineries on the island?
Actually, since 2016, I think more and more are coming up. I think in total now there should be 7 with us.
Oh, wow. Okay, so quite a few. That's great. I know that some of your wines you either ferment and or age in amphora. Is that something that you do because it's a traditional Greek process, or do you prefer amphora for any particular reason?
Well, actually, we age and we vinify in different contents. It's not just amphoras. For sure, it's a traditional, let's say, tool. But at the same time, it works out well. It gives complexity. The wines, they keep their the amphoras. They keep purity and the typicity, the authenticity of the wines where they come from. And also lately, we use also to Assyrtiko and Mavrodrano partially amphoras made by glass. So that's also quite interesting. It's a new research we applied, and the results are astonishing. So we keep on buying more and more. We want, for sure, we want to have at the end wines that they're 100% from amphoras from made by glass, but quite an important percentage, let's say.
Wonderful. Well, I know for a lot of American consumers, they're still learning about Greek wine. We sadly don't get a large selection imported into the United States. And so part of this series is just really helping, share more about Greek wine. And I'd love to hear from you. You've worked in California, you've worked in France, and you went to school in France. So you've been exposed to a lot of wonderful wine markets. If you had to tell the listeners just 1 or 2 thoughts about why they should try Greek wines, or why they should specifically try the Thanos wines, what would you say? What's so exciting about Greek wine?
In general, about Greek wines, I would say that they should try them, because there is something unique. You can't find it elsewhere. And we speak about almost 300 indigenous varieties coming from Greece. So it's something new something challenging, something. So I think to give a chance to a Greek wine, it's a good thing. Now, specifically to our wines, I mean, we're trying to do a great job. We are aiming for the best wine. Sometimes, well, in the future, maybe in the world. So I think it's important because we try it. The landscape is unique. You rarely find it elsewhere. So I think, and the way we work is to preserve that uniqueness. So I think it's important, and it's you have to. The consumers, they have to try our wines because they're special, they're rare, high quality wines, and it's hard to find such similar wines elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, Thanos, this has been such an amazing interview. I would love to hear from you. Is there anything exciting coming up for T-Oinos in 2023, or anything that you're planning for as the associate winemaker?
So for 2023, I think the most exciting is that we're going to be released. In 2023, the red wines we have in the market is the vintage of 2020, but for us was an astonishing vintage. So it's important to mention that. And also in 2002, wines will be in the market, the whites and the rosé as well. So 2022 was also an exceptional vintage. We could say that probably was even better than 2020. So that's those two are exciting news. Apart from that, 2023 we're gonna release for the first time a more premium rosé. Apart from the Mav Rosé that already exists, so that's also important to mention. And also 2023, the works will continue. End of 2022, we started to build a new winery, a new facility that will put, I think, T-Oinos on a different level, seeing how the building is going to be. So it's important also to mention that 2023 the works will continue, and we're hoping that the vintage of 2024 will be in our new facilities.
Nice. So a lot of exciting things. That's some big stuff coming to T-Oinos. With the new facility, will it be a place where guests can come visit and folks can tour the winery?
Of course. And first of all, what we do now, and our philosophy is we start the tastings and the tours firstly in the vineyard, and then it ends with a small tour at the winery and then a tasting. So because we want to have the tourists, our guests, to experience the unique landscape and the unique terroir of Klosterasta. So we always start from the vineyard and then we end up in the winery. But of course, the new facility will help us a lot. Will help us a lot with tours and tastings.
That sounds incredible. This has been awesome. Thanos, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you joining us on the Wine CEO podcast. And I'll be sure to link the website as well as the social media and all the ways that listeners can get connected with T-Oinos so that they can follow along on the journey of the winery, see the new wines that are coming about, as well as the new winery in the coming months.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
So I hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Thanos today. It was so interesting for me to learn a bit more about the landscape in the islands. I think we always imagine these like beautiful sunny beaches and whitewashed homes, but the islands are truly mountainous, right? They're windy, they're cold in the winter, they're challenging to be a winemaker there. So I thought it was really cool to hear the honest perspective of what it's like to live on the island and to produce wine in this region. I also love the passion just around preserving the history and heritage of these wineries and and really encouraging young individuals to be a part of these winemaking teams throughout the islands. Definitely a very cool project, and exciting to see that T-Oinos is making some outstanding wines that are in some of the top restaurants all around the world. Now, next week, I'm interviewing a father-daughter winemaking team, and this was the first time I've ever done this on the Wine CEO podcast. It was so fun to bring together a father-daughter duo that has a winery, both with a location in Santorini as well as on mainland Greece. So we'll talk more about that next week, but it's going to be fun. You're going to get to hear a little bit more about the climate on Santorini and what is so unique about this island in the Cyclades, what winemakers are doing to make these incredible Assyrticos that, again, have really put Greece on the map recently. And we're also going to talk about a wine that they make that we've referenced a couple times throughout the series, but haven't really gotten into yet because it hasn't really come up with some of the other winemakers. But this father-daughter winemaking duo makes Retsina. And so we are going to talk to them about modern day Retsina and what it's like making a great quality Retsina in a sea of what has been a very tumultuous tradition around this particular wine. So anyway, it's an episode you absolutely don't want to miss. The father-daughter duo was just so lively in their interview. They were awesome. I know that you are going to fall in love with them immediately, just like I did. So be sure to subscribe to the Wine CEO podcast if you haven't yet. Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, because you really don't want to miss next week's episode. Honestly, it was probably one of my favorite interviews to do yet. It was really an awesome, awesome time. So I think you're going to really enjoy it. So make sure you stay tuned for that, as well as the last few episodes in our Greece mini-series. We're coming up to the end here soon. Some of you have been loving this series. I'm sure some of you are probably ready to move on to the next topic, but I hope you've learned something new and it's been as enjoyable for you as it has been for me. I've learned so much from these winemakers and producers and sommeliers and just industry professionals. It's definitely been a really fun series for me to learn more about this amazing region that is really growing in popularity. So I think after this series, you're going to be much more aware than the average wine consumer, and that's going to help you be able to pick out some amazing wines when you're shopping or dining in the near future. If you aren't following me on Instagram, you need to be. I'm posting extra content throughout this mini series with food and wine pairings, photos of Greek wineries, and so much more. So definitely check me out at The Wine CEO if you haven't yet. All right, until next week, friends, drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all next Wednesday on the Wine CEO podcast.